Coming up, the sequester. Big cuts are coming to federal spending. We'll show you how those cuts might impact the national parks everyone in D.C. loves.
And drivers for undocumented immigrants. Some lawmakers in Maryland are working to allow them to get licenses. We'll explain. District Wire News starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Jackie Ho.
And I'm Ariana Wallstadter.
Today marks the third full day of the slow-moving sequester cuts. The sequester is planning to last 10 years and save more than $1 trillion. The military is expected to feel its impact first, with $85 billion in cuts. There's going to be cuts in military school districts, military pay, and support to troops in Afghanistan. Half the cuts will happen at the Pentagon.
Councilmember Jim Graham is busy this week as chairman of the Human Service Committee. A hearing this morning addressed children issues.
Councilman Jim Graham has his hands full this past week as chairman of the Human Services Committee. Youth Services and Development is an important topic as of late. This morning, Councilman Graham hosted a hearing in which 15 people representing different youth development organizations requested money from the DC Trust.
So, we'll now proceed to our public witnesses.
Today's hearing dealt mostly with furthering youth academically, but late last week, the conversation revolved around meeting kids' basic necessities. I'm standing here outside the DC General Shelter. It's actually part of a larger health complex that you can see all the way behind me. The DC General Shelter is filled to capacity with 600 people, and there's a waiting list, but the conditions are questionable. There are families of 4 living in one room, mice infestations, and some nights with no heat. Councilman Graham held a different hearing last Thursday about the conditions children are living in at the DC General Shelter specifically. Similar to the hearing this morning, it all comes back to money.
The statistics show that you have to be making at least $25 or more per hour to be able to afford the market rent in this town. So of course, even a person who's working, making $13 an hour, which is, decent money, but it doesn't meet the rental requirements.
Now that the sequestration has officially gone into effect, money will get tighter as children-focused programs try to get better.
The issue is maybe not the shelter itself, but maybe the lack of safe and affordable housing in the Washington area.
Councilman Graham faces tough work ahead in managing the organizations that involve support and aid for children. For District Wire News, I'm Rachel Ray.
Metro Reconstruction is in trouble after the federal government announced cuts to the program. The federal government initially promised $150 million a year for the transit system over 10 years. In return, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia would have to pitch in $50 million a year. Now, the federal government is cutting their share by 10%. Some council members say they might be threatened with cuts of their own.
Virginians are facing the largest tax hike in the state's history. Governor Bob McDonnell proposed the $6 billion hike that was recently approved. The hike is being used to fund transportation projects and will replace the state's gas tax with wholesale tax and motor fuels. Many Virginians don't agree with the hike. They say it comes as a surprise, especially after Governor McDonnell's 2009 campaign that pledged no new taxes.
The national parks are facing various problems after sequester cuts went into effect on Friday. The potential impacts include drastic cuts to jobs, educational programs, visitor centers, and visitor access points. Colin Campbell has the details.
With sequestration set to go into effect in less than 4 days, the National Park Service is one of the federal agencies scrambling to figure out what to do if its funding is slashed. In D.C., the Park Service predicts that over $2 million will be cut from the city's parks budget.
For the area in D.C., the parks live pretty much paycheck to paycheck anyway. The only cuts they're able to make are in the things that are able to be stopped right away. So for example, there won't be the ranger tours on the mall that people expect. I can imagine that special events will be canceled.
National park funding makes up less than 1/2 of 1% of the federal budget, according to the National Park Conservation Association. And the possibility of having that small funding cut even more had many DC tourists venting frustration at Congress this past weekend.
I think it's really kind of a shame that they can't come together and, work as a bipartisan, because that's what it was. That's what it was based on, is a government by the people for the people. So if they can't come to an agreement, they're not fulfilling what our forefathers planned for this country. And I mean, like I said, this is beautiful. Why would you want to cut funds to something that millions of people from all over the world come to see?
And it's not just the National Mall that will be affected by the agency's budget cuts. Parks across the city, including this one, Rock Creek Park, will see its funding cut too. So what do all these cuts mean? In the short term, the DC Park Service says its parks will remain open, but some services will stop or be slowed down. Trash removal will be delayed, trail maintenance will stop, and exhibits, like those at the Lincoln and Jefferson Memorial, could be closed. According to an internal Park Service memo obtained by the Associated Press, furloughing staff is also a possibility. Park supporters say those cuts could cripple an agency that has seen its budget routinely slashed over the past several years. Colin Campbell for District Wire News.
Maryland lawmakers are working hard to pass a bill that would allow illegal immigrants to get driver's licenses. The push comes a year after many illegal immigrants in Maryland were given the right to in-state college tuition. Alexia Campbell is in the studio with more. Alexia?
Thank you, Ariana. Maryland would be the first state to allow illegal immigrants to drive. Illinois, New Mexico, Washington, and Utah have already passed similar bills. Supporters here in Maryland say that the law would actually keep all drivers safe.
The reality is that many undocumented workers do drive, and by allowing them to get driver's licenses, they'll be able to come out of the shadows. In that respect, they'll be required to purchase insurance, and it'll be safer for them and also for other drivers on the roads.
The law would only allow undocumented immigrants to use the license to drive. It won't count as a federal ID and can't be used to board an airplane. Two bills in the House and Senate have strong support from Democratic lawmakers in Annapolis. If either bill passes, the law would go into effect October 1st.
Es bien importante porque es parte fundamental para moverse en este país, para trabajar. Por si no tenemos licencia, no lo podemos mover para ningún lado.
A state analysis says that in the first year alone, Maryland could get up to $7 million in driver's license fees. However, to implement it would cost $3.6 million. Ariana, back to you.
Thank you, Alexia.
The Maryland General Assembly is continuing efforts to abolish the death penalty. The state Senate will vote on the law this week. 24 votes are needed for the law to pass. So far, 26 senators say they support it. Many Maryland police officers and prosecutors are against the law. They argue the death penalty is a valuable tool against heinous crimes.
Virginia state officials are hoping to make Virginia a new drone testing site. This may be difficult because the Virginia General Assembly has banned government drone use for 2 years. Despite the ban, Virginia state officials are hoping to secure a spot as one of the 6 new test sites that are being made.
New legislation in Maryland is making the gun manufacturer Beretta considering moving to a neighboring state. The new gun ban would make it illegal for the company's nearly 400 employees to own some of Beretta's products. Representative Thomas Miller says a new law was designed with the company in mind, but Beretta says it's still not happy. West Virginia and Virginia are pouncing on the opportunity to bring the company to their state. If Beretta stays, the company is projected to pay Maryland $31 million in taxes.
DC residents are enjoying a bright but chilly Monday before the weather gets worse. From Tuesday night to Wednesday, a major winter storm named Snowquester will snow its powder with possibly more than 5 inches of snow in the DC area, the biggest in more than 2 years. But the storm quickly leaves by Thursday and into the weekend. Snowquester is distant memory with temperatures into the 50s.
And the peak dates for the cherry blossoms this year were announced today. March 26th through March 30th will be the peak times this year. This is the second year in a row the dates have fallen at the end of March. The peak date is when 70% of the blossoms on the tidal basin are open. The festival dates are March 20th through April 14th.
Daylight savings time starts this week, which means we'll lose all that one precious hour of sleep. Christina Brooks has the story on why teenagers in D.C. might be able to start sleeping in and going to school a little bit later.
Fairfax and Montgomery counties in thinking about starting school later in the day. These counties border D.C., which means the city may be next on the list to adjust its schedule. School leaders discussed the possibility of later start times at a conference for the National Association of Secondary School Principals last Friday.
What we're finding is students who have adequate sleep, along with these other pieces of physical activity and good nutrition and regular activities in their life, are more likely to have better academic performance.
Parents across the area say they have to battle with kids daily who have developed unhealthy sleeping habits.
The only way that my kids were able to get 8 hours of sleep was in 2 shifts. They would come home from school after their activities, take a nap for 3 or 4 hours, then they would wake up, do their homework, stay up late, watch TV, talk to their friends, and do all those things. And never, their rhythms were such that they couldn't get to bed before 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Zombie-like walks to the bus aren't because of a bad attitude, but because of science. Right after puberty, hormones in the body don't allow teens to fall asleep until around 11 at night. The body also stays asleep until after 8 in the morning, even if a kid goes to bed early. Research shows that it takes more than a school board to change the start time. I'm here at Woodrow Wilson High School, which starts as late as 8:45 in the morning. But starting that late could mean that teachers don't have enough time to spend at home with their families, and students don't have enough time after school to hit the library. While no set plans have been made to adjust school hours, maybe the thought of a later wake-up call might just help teens rest a little easier. Reporting from Washington for District Wire News, I'm Christina Brooks.
Coming up after the break, D.C. protesters are demanding a change in U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. We'll explain.
And we'll show you why students at American University might want to change residence halls. Stay with us.